Organizations and PMOs today are experimenting with AI in fragmented and inconsistent ways, oftentimes with wildly different results. Where's your organization today?
The PMO world is at an inflection point. AI is reshaping how work gets managed. Microsoft is rewriting the platform rulebook, and the organizations that get this right will pull away from those that don't. The Frontier PMO is the podcast for project and work management leaders who want to be on the right side of that line. Hosted by Mike Taylor and Tad Haas, two of the sharpest minds in Microsoft work management. This is where co-intelligent strategy meets real-world execution. Let's get into it.
In this episode, we're going to talk about how the PMO evolves based on the strength of its foundation. I'm Mike Taylor, and I have with me today Tad Haas.
Morning, Mike. Good
morning. Before we get into it, let's talk about what we're actually seeing right now. We have, obviously we deal with a lot of organizations. Some, we're talking to initially, some we've been partnered with for many, many years, some 8, 10, 12 years, on this kind of project management journey, which has really evolved a lot as technology and of course with AI coming on strong the last 2 or 3 years. So what are we actually seeing? I think we're seeing more and more people actually starting to use AI as assistants, right? And you're seeing a lot of, bring your own AI. Sometimes people are starting to enable Copilot or Claude into their organizations to help with assistant type work, right, Tad?
Yep, we're definitely seeing. Well, it's all over the board, frankly, Mike. Some people are all over it, using it 24/7. Other people are scared and not doing anything, and others are in the middle. What's not, it's simply not consistent.
Yeah, it's simply not consistent, and some people are actually bringing AI and actually starting to do some of the things with like co-work, and they're starting to do some basic agentic things to help themselves. A lot of people are doing things with AI to help themselves and their organizations. But what we're seeing is at very fundamental levels. A lot of note taking in teams, a lot of email building, a lot of document building, strategy. I was talking to a VP of strategy in a major organization just yesterday, and he was saying how they're using Claude quite a bit to help build his team. He's got like 70 people reporting to him, and he was working with the CEO and talking about how they're going to really plan out for AI actually, and how AI is going to impact their organization, not necessarily the PMO. That's a different discussion, which we'll get back to, but the whole organization. And he's been using it quite a bit for their annual planning and trying to how they're going to shape all that out. And he says that, it's great to have that sounding board as an it saves a lot of time. Well, in some cases, maybe does it really save time, Tad, or does it? Or I mean, that can be argued, right?
A rat hole, Mike.
I did. I just kind of spiraled. I was thinking about actually preparing for this and how I was, we do use AI for it, and we were just talking before we started how I started down a path. We had all talked about it. We created some good talking points and stuff, and I was like, I want to tweak this, and I started using AI and went back and forth. An hour and a half later, I'm kind of back around to where I was already thinking. So sometimes it saves time, and sometimes I think it actually just helps you come out with a better product, right?
Sometimes it's a good sounding board, sometimes it's an echo chamber, and sometimes it's the rattle. You were talking about this executive you were working with yesterday. I had 2 experiences yesterday. One was, we were having a meeting. There were lots of different people coming into the meeting. And in the past, people would go, oh, what's that note taker? What's that recording? What's that thing that's in your Teams meeting that's doing this? And of course, we know in Teams, the facilitator agent is one of the most useful and practical agents directly. Yeah, and currently, most project manager people I talk to are all actively using meeting note taking during their virtual meetings and even during their face-to-face meetings now, to the point where meeting minutes, note taking has just by itself saved a truckload of time for individual project managers and PMO teams to begin with. And then the second experience was I was working with a project management consultant yesterday, and she popped up and said, man, I'm just using CoWork for the first time. And she was doing it live in our conversation. She said, that's interesting. And then started going down this, experiment of, we're used to using Copilot or ChatGPT. Now this whole notion of co-work is coming into it from Microsoft. And so there's just so many new ways to look at this.
Mhm.
It changes every hour of every day.
Yeah, it really does. But that's actually a really nice segue into kind of recapping where we were in our last episode, where we talked about, what are kind of the three phases of a Frontier PMO's evolution. And for those who didn't catch the episode, it's great. I've had a lot of play on it and a lot of response and everything. It's been awesome. I think it's the biggest video we've ever had in our YouTube channel over the last 7 or 8 years, but in terms of number hours of watch time. But the Frontier PMO is sort of a concept that we've been working on, and it kind of overlays with Microsoft's concept of the Frontier PMO. So we're following the same sort of framework. The reason we're doing this is, again, there's a lot of people that are it goes beyond dabbling now. They're really using AI in meaningful ways, but it's more at the assist layer. So how do you start to think about it from a project management office or a value delivery organization, whether you call it a PMO or not? Of how you're going to get a clear sense of progression of how you're going to evolve this over time, and whether that time frame is, your optimists say, everything's going to be AI enabled and fully operational in 6 months, and some say it's going to be 6 years. It's somewhere in between. It's not, things are not going to be the same, right, in the very near future.
No, and when we come back and reflect on those three, scenarios, AI assist, AI augmentation, and then co-intelligence, each one of those is a significant step in its own right. We can all do a quick chat thing with our tools of choice, but then to go through, and I'm sure you'll talk about this more, is that, to take that next step into augmentation relies so much on the architecture and the data of your enterprise, let alone getting to the co-intelligence moment where we're allowing AI, teams of AIs to go off and do things for us, not just in an assist or augment way.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good segue. I'm going to bring up a story from 3 years ago, almost to the day. I think it was March of 23. It was our very first, before you joined us, Tad, but it was our very first webinar about how AI can start to impact project management. And it was very well attended. I think we had 900 registrants and 300 people showed up, 400 people showed up. But we were talking about the fundamentals of AI. And of course, a lot of people were just getting introduced to it and they wanted to see whiz bang stuff. And we really kind of went through the first 15 or 20 minutes talking about how you do data shaping, you get the right kind of stuff. And one person just kept hammering in the chat thread, when are you going to show the cool stuff? When are you going to show the AI? When are you going to show the AI? And finally I went, okay, I get it. You want to see the cool stuff, but let me really articulate to you the really valuable part of AI, and it's the data. If you don't have good data, I mean, it does amazing things when you're just looking at it from what it does by, the sum total of human knowledge that's on the internet that it ingests for its, for its basis for the LLMs. But if you're trying to do it against your data and the data is not good and it's not well shaped, then you're going to get, it's just like the old thing about automation, right? If you have bad process and you automate it, you just have a faster bad process. The AI even amplifies that faster.
We've come full circle. I
right?
mean, as we've been supporting and working with customers for a good while, that used to be the mantra. Okay, you're setting up a database to do a thing, right? What's the quality of the data? Garbage in, garbage out. It's like we're always coming back to the same issue.
Right.
And the thing today is that these tools expose those holes. They expose the gaps so quickly. If you are observant and if you are watching what's been fed or what coming back to you, if you aren't watching it, it does, AI does such a convincing job of pushing forward with what sounds like positive, accurate information that you as a project manager or anyone related to that as a stakeholder are in danger of, really mucking it up, because, and whether you look like a fool because you have incomplete data or you really mess it up and make bad decisions for an enterprise because of it, this data thing really does matter.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people just rush headlong into it and don't think about the data and what it's actually reasoning over. And that's one of the reasons so many organizations have put brakes on it. And they're starting to understand it enough and put the right kind of data security models and AI governance in place that it's starting to open up, and it's all across the board. Smaller organizations especially have going headlong. Bigger organizations that have compliance, maybe they're publicly traded or they're, you know, have in regulated industries, they're much more cautious
Right.
about this journey. But they're all moving in that direction. I think to your point, and I'm going off script here just a little bit. There's two things that you see in terms of the data. And like you said, it's a very good point. AI comes up with results that look convincing, whether it's good or not, right? Um, two things that can affect, there's a lot of stuff that can affect it, but two major things affect it kind of in the project management world. Whether it's reasoning over, whether it's missing data that you need to have included in there, or just as bad, it's including some other data that it shouldn't be including. Maybe it's about another project or program or something. And if you don't know what it's reasoning over and you don't have it shaped and scoped correctly, it's going to come back with results that, again, look great, just like you said, Dad, but it may not be great. It may,
Right.
That's where people talk about hallucinations and stuff like that. It's like, where did this come from? Well, it was reasoning over this other thing that you didn't even know it was doing. And it brought that information in. And all of a sudden it looks like, what is this?
Yeah.
And like you said, some people publish stuff without reviewing it, and that's the human in the loop is always going to be a really important part of getting this, and it's going to change the role of the human. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So I think you're let's bring it back to, I'm back on script now, to what you said a minute ago of shaping the data and what we're seeing. And the first piece is in this journey from an architecture perspective, and we talk about this, we've got a whole series on architecture matters, is unifying the work, right? And connecting the work. So the organization brings all the conversations, decisions, risks, resources, outcomes kind of into the connected ecosystem. And in our world, that's the M365 ecosystem, which is built for doing this. We're doing every day, we're all doing everything. And if you're an M365 customer, you're probably doing an awful lot in Teams. You're doing stuff in your Office apps. You may be using Copilot to take notes. You may be using Planner or Project, or soon maybe it's desktop, maybe online that's going to be retired soon. You've got Power Platforms, you've got business systems, which the Microsoft ecosystem and Power Plat and now Copilot all will connect to external systems very easily. So it's really about bringing that connected work together. So you start with that base to start to build a Frontier PMO, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So the real question here is not what are we doing with AI? It's, can AI see the work that we're doing and work with us at that fundamental level? So I think that's a really important.
What a great way to ask that question. I thought you were going to start heading into this notion we talked quite a bit about, which is in the flow of work.
Yeah.
And I think that is so spot on. Again, coming back to experience, as I was having conversations recently, that the customer agreed that they're spending the vast majority of their project management time within the M365 suite of tools. So they're in Excel, they're creating Word documents, or prepping PowerPoints, and doing all the things that we do as information workers and have been doing for decades. And project management, unfortunately, of late has been some third-party SaaS tool outside of the working system of record, right? It's like we are working with these tools every hour of every day.
Right.
And when we can use AI to augment or assist directly within that collaboration world, what we do all day, every day, then that really changes the scenario as well.
Right. Again, like you just said, reiterating, what we've been doing as project managers forever is chasing data, chasing status, trying to collect it, augment it, like you said, in spreadsheets, PowerPoints, pulling things together from different systems, because what ends up happening is you have, one system you're doing this on, or a SaaS system over here and a different system. And then we've got the flow of work where we're all working inside the M365 thing. And you've been chasing all that. What you're doing by unifying it now is you're allowing AI to observe the work as it's happening. So that's really fundamental to helping humans do the stuff. So that really starts with that AI assist phase. So now you start to unify it, and we have a lot of customers that are on that journey. We have some customers that are much further along than others. Some we've been with, and even before we were talking about AI, like we said, you go back 6, 7, 8 years, we were helping them maybe get on Project Online, now get off Project Online. Now we're helping them modernize. We're helping them now kind of move towards Frontier. And the core premise has always been to unify, because that had a lot of value even before we talked about AI, right? And we've talked a lot about that in other contexts where you're not having as much shadow IT, you're not having as much context switching and everything else. But now when you in the context of AI, it becomes it's hyper focused on having the right data and the right data shape. So now that you start putting these things together, what we see customers have is that patterns start to emerge, and the PMO or the operational organization doing the value delivery in the projects can start to learn from the signals. So we're seeing this now in some of the AI we've done with some of our products, and some things that we've done with customers using Copilot and a variety of AI tools. But you start to see risk signals, not just risk from a risk registry that humans have entered, but what AI can reason over, because now it has that collection of data. And the better that data gets and the more robust and larger it gets, the better AI can help reason over it and look at risk signals, sentiment signals, how are teams feeling about things that may not show up on a dashboard or a KPI indicator, dependencies, capacity, value realization signals, which at the end of the day is the ultimate goal of anything we're
That's why
doing.
we're doing the projects. Yeah.
Right. I mean, organizations exist to create value, and project management offices and project management exist to create value for the organization through successful execution of those initiatives.
Right.
So,
And as we often say, it's either, well, I know I say it, it's either make money, save money, or meet a regulatory compliance. That's why we do work in these organizations.
as we joked when we were talking about that the other day, you said that, and somebody said, "Or stay out of jail."
Or stay out of jail, right? Yes, I gotta remember to add that one.
Well, that's
You
part of
know,
the compliance piece.
Indeed. As I was doing a demo yesterday, one of the things that really caught this participant's attention was sort of two things. One, this idea that, well, really three things. One is the idea that I can assign the AI to be part of the project team, and that the AI, in this case Copilot, and the planner agent can go be a resource to do the actual work with you. And I know I talk about this, but I'm such a huge fan. Resource bottlenecks are one of the biggest problems. And when you get, for the small price of Copilot, you're getting extra labor, if you will, to do the work, is just really sort of game changing.
Right.
The second thing was, we've talked about sentiment analysis for a long time, but I think people didn't really understand what that's about. And I think now, because there's this AI reasoning over all of our conversations, the appropriate conversations, of course, that we're able to get yet another trend of, the emotions of a project and the way people feel about it, not just, did we get the right schedule date? Are the risks read or otherwise?
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing, and you showed this to me, I think you or Matt showed this to me first, where, we've got the things that show up in our status reports that are the things that are surfaced as traditional project management updates. But then when you peel back the onion a little bit more and ask your agent to go look into your data set and say, what are the things that look okay, but might not be okay? And when that starts to surface up and you bubble up and you're like, oh, didn't think about that, didn't think about this. And in a real live demo yesterday, the data that surfaced, it's like the participant was just like, wow, okay, that is a different way of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So you actually hit exactly on the next point I had. And so going back to the first piece, we talked about, you put everything, you unify it. So now AI can reason over it. It can see what we're all doing. Now the question is, and what you just hit on is a really important point. Now, what are those signals telling us? So what can we do with it, right? So it kind of moves from what is the report or the BI dashboard or whatever to what's the interpretation, pattern recognition, and start to look at process optimization. So I think that's a really cool next step in that journey. By the way, these steps are not necessarily completely linear, just like anything else. Just like in the past, when we talked about project management maturity, you may be real mature in one piece and not another. And
Right.
it kind of, you start to move up those 3-step process, like we're heading towards co-intelligence. So, but at this second step, you're really starting to look at operational intelligence. So you move beyond just AI assistance, and you're actually starting to move into operational intelligence.
Well, what was interesting at this summary during the exercise yesterday was it showed it surfaced more risks, or surfaced potential scheduled delays based off a lack of work in the flow. Right, there was no document being created, there was no artifacts that were being supported or created. So that's an immediate signal when you've got those as key things for a bit of work. But what was more important, it said you've got some trends that keep showing up, that this isn't happening, that isn't happening, and the other thing. And so it's recognizing the consistency or inconsistency from the
From the
organization,
signals.
and
Yep.
that was a new way of looking at things.
Yeah, there's a lot of eye opening. That actually brings us to the third piece that we have. And this piece is something I think we've thought a lot about, and people are just starting to get into this piece, I think, because there's a lot of work to do on those first couple steps we talked about. But this is adaptive value delivery. So this is really how we can change the models of how PMOs operate and how value delivery operates and project delivery operates based on what we're learning from those first couple steps, right? And from the signal interpretation stuff. So, for instance, um, the behavior of humans. How are we going to upskill humans to say, how are we reacting to this new world of these things that we're seeing? And we talked about the human in the loop piece. It's really important to understand what AI is doing, what it's not doing, what we're getting out of it, and that the role of the humans, the project managers, the team members, the executives, is all going to shift as this value, as we move more and more towards co-intelligence, right? And so it's really important to understand how are the humans going to how are those roles going to shift, and try to, as we're learning from it, it's sort of like horse and cart thing, right? Do you upskill and then go the other way, or do you kind of stay, we learn from it and then we upskill? I don't know exactly how this is going to shape out. I'm not sure how anybody does, because we don't know what exactly is going to happen. But I think we have to kind of plan for it, because we know that governance is already being redesigned. We know processes will be redesigned. And your example you talked about, we will still have risk registries, but we will also now have interpretation, and AI will reason over and find other things that are coming out of that, and that will reshape how risk management is done. Just that one component of project management, right?
Couldn't
So,
agree
and
more.
that's going to happen across the board. And organizations need to start thinking. And I think maybe the biggest piece that comes out of all this is organizations need to think about how they're going to reshape how they're delivering value within this co-intelligent um, system. So you need to be aware enough to start reskilling your humans, right? You need to be aware enough to think about your governance and your process definition and prioritization models and decision making and capacity. Because at some point, where people are already jumping to this agentic AI thing and trying to give all the power to the agents and have autonomous work going, and that will be a big part. We'll talk about that. That's kind of the sort of holy grail of where we're going with all this co-intelligent system. But if you don't get it right as you're growing this, you're going to really screw that up. I mean, you talk about getting something wrong because you have a bad process and automate it faster, or have AI that hallucinates. That's bad enough. If you put AI in charge of doing things, and you don't have this fundamental components right, where you've got the humans understanding their role and how they're helping govern it and everything, this adaptive value delivery component or step, things can go really bad.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, we can't even talk about the politics of an organization and an enterprise. We're tech guys, right? So we're very system focused and all of that. But I believe that this human in the loop and the human skill sets will be the things that will help create the best results. If humans get better at communicating, if humans get better at thinking creatively for problem solving, and that if humans use these tools to change the outcome, then that's the direction we want to be going in. If all we're doing is automating the same tasks, we've been doing that for 30 years. So, now's the time to think differently, think broadly, and as humans be creative. And there's a lot of learning in the moment. I'm kind of a trial by fire guy. So for me, it's, get in there, use the tools, make a mess of it for a while, and then, figure it out, learn while doing, and then try to get a consensus with your teammates, with your project leader, or, the executives or customers for that matter, if you're doing it that way. Learn together, and
Right.
then, keep using these tools to communicate, and still communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. And that communication is absolutely key when you talk about the adaptive value delivery. That's how the people, and we're going to learn from what we're doing, and then of course AI models and things that we're doing are going to help us with that learning. So it's going to become very important.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, out of that adaptive value delivery we'll be talking about, obviously we're going to have faster decisions, better allocation, resources, risk management, all the project management thingies that we do. And we'll start to really see a lot better value realization, like measurable value realization. I think is going to happen.
You just brought something up really interesting about decision making, and I recently read, I think it was a PMI article that talked about one of the key blockers of project success is the delay in decisions. That there's so much either review cycle, there's so much delay between people, there's, all of these things get in way of the speed of decision making. Do you think that, we're going to get better at that? Do you think that these tools will really help with the decision making side of it?
Um,
Well,
I think it can be exponentially faster. I also think it can, if not done appropriately, the wrong decisions will be made. So I think there's going to be a lot of caution. Um,
right.
and some folks and some people will throw caution to the wind and build these systems out. I do think that the decision making will get much better. We've always said it's really you cannot repeat this enough times. One of the major challenges, you said it a few minutes ago, in project management has always been chasing data, right, to make these decisions. So I think you said using spreadsheets and PowerPoints and whatever tools you're using across everything. And then project managers, in many cases, become like analysts trying to aggregate and do this data in a format that they can hand to an executive, a PMO leader, or a C-suite and say, this is what's going on. We need your help in this. But by the time you get there, sometimes all that data is stale. Things have moved. So those pieces I think are going to be accelerated. It's not just because AI, it's because the platforms are much more ubiquitous in their data handling now, especially M365. You've got all this ability to connect and automate data and workflows, which are super important. It's not just all AI. You've got to be able to do those things too, to bring that information to AI and humans, and then that will accelerate the ability to make those decisions. I think in some cases, I know you've been there too. You've been presenting to a governance board or a steering committee or something, and they're like, okay, I hear what you're telling me, Mike, but I'm not sure I'm ready to make a decision till I have some more data. You're telling me this is this and that, and you need this decision, but I need a little more time. And I think it's because they're in many cases not sure about the relevant. It's not that they didn't believe me; they didn't believe what I was being told necessarily, or the process that was getting that
Oh, for
information
sure.
to
Oh,
them.
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That goes without saying. It's this whole notion. We were talking with a customer last week about the status reports and the notion of self-serve reporting. There was a vision that said, okay, well, executives will just go to the dashboard. They'll get the update because they went to the dashboard.
they're good
Well,
to go.
they don't go to the dashboard,
Yeah.
right? They, like, literally time and time again, people want a sort of validation with a human. It's like, it's great that I see the picture, but I have to have that trust.
Right.
I have to trust that the data is right.
Right.
And that, that trust notion, it's a giant broad topic that I think, one of our favorite books, Co-Intelligent, talks about pretty regularly, is this notion of trust.
Yep.
And, how do we, in these early days at warp speed, think about trust during the whole life cycle of these projects and this effort? So,
And it's going to create, you just made me think of something. It's going to create some interesting dynamics. I was thinking about, sitting in front of one of the steering committees and being challenged in today's environment, or maybe tomorrow's in the very near future, one of those or more of those executives might say, okay, I hear what Mike told me. I know he was working with the technical teams and the project leads, and he brought all this information. I hear what he said. Let me go check it. Let me go
Right.
ask AI what it says, because I have access to all that data too, and
Yep.
ask the question in different ways. And I think that's going to start happening too, right?
Yep.
They may not. You're right. The executives almost never rely on the dashboards because they want the chokeable neck. The report is not the chokeable neck. It's the project or
Right.
program manager or whoever's doing it, right? It's like, all right, Tad, you're telling me this. If I can rely
Right.
on it, but I think more and more there's going to be like these alternate paths of information gathering and stuff that will happen. Um, and I think we're going to see that. So it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting.
I said that flippantly about executives not looking at dashboards. They do,
Sure.
and more that becomes the case. And I don't want to imply to people that that's a bad thing, because it's not. And that's a culture thing as well.
But you're spot on in that if they're going to make a decision, they're not going to just take it off of a dashboard and go make a phone call to make a major decision on $100 million initiative. They're going to
Right.
they're going to talk to some people. What does
Yeah.
that mean? Where did you get this? Verify for me that this is the case. Then I'll make the decision. You gave me a couple choices. Can I have a third? Here's an idea. So that's humans are always going to be part of that. Those kinds of decision making processes.
Agreed.
So the fourth level, and we talk about this, is and it starts to move into that third phase, and that's the co-intelligent value delivery. Can humans and AI continuously optimize value together? So this is where we talk about, and from a technical perspective, we hear people talking about agentic AI and autonomous agents and these kinds of things that are in there. So everything starts to operate as kind of a living system where you start to assign. People have all these different concepts of how this will evolve, and people are trying different experiments. But at the end, the PMO or value delivery organization is really going to orchestrate all the work, the decisions, the resourcing, the investments, and ultimately the value delivery and benefit realization. And all that's going to happen through this co-intelligent system, which is going to involve humans and AI. And AI will be part of that system. And people, depending on where you want to go and how much power you want to give and how confident you are in the structures you've built through this process, some organizations will give more power than others. Just like they have the PMOs that were all human built, right? We've all seen it. We've, you and I, if we count the number of PMOs we've dealt with over our careers, it's got to be hundreds, maybe thousands, right? And they all, every single one operates just a little bit differently based on how they want to do it and how much trust they have in the PMO. Some are matrixed, some are not matrixed. They have all the resources in, and that's the same kind of thing. You think about a matrixed PMO, part of that matrix, and the people who are managing it and the people and the what's executing will become AI.
Hmm. Yeah, it still baffles me about all the different, I shouldn't say baffles, that's not the right word. It impresses me in scary ways sometimes, all the different structures that enterprises will put in place to do value delivery, to do the work.
Right.
And what oversight or governance is in place or not in place. I was recently talking to a major pharmaceutical company, and shocking how unstructured they were, just shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when you talk to the CIO, he or she has a person that they trust who's leading the charge on the things that they oversee. So they didn't have the title of PMO director, but that's who that person was, right? They were the person that was in command and control.
Yeah, they're responsible for the value delivery for whatever those initiatives are. That's why I kind of go back to that. It's not always a PMO.
Well, you talk about that value delivery, and we work with PMOs all the time, but we do that in support of their impact to the business units,
Mm-hmm.
right? And PMOs or project leaders are in the business units as often as they are sort of
Sure.
in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of the PMO as a business unit creating value for the enterprise, then is the PMO a good place to start or engage more AI activity? Is that
Right.
a natural place to begin these experiments, if they're not already doing it today.
Yeah, interesting you say that. We've mused on this some, and I think I actually did a LinkedIn post a couple weeks ago about this. It just struck me reading one of what you just see endless amounts of. We seem to be in a little bit of a period of AI backlash. You've seen all the commencement ceremonies. We just went through commencement season, college and high school and everything. And, people getting booed because they thought their commencement speech was written by GPT or something. And so we're seeing a lot of that go on. But what's interesting about that is that it's going to continue to march forward.
Never once in my career have I seen technology take a step back. Literally, I'm trying to come up with an example where we started down a path, and society, businesses, tech companies decided, nah, we're not going to do that after all.
Right.
I mean, there are products that come and go that started going down a wrong path, but relative to industry trends and things like that, it just doesn't happen. Once everything's in motion, and once there's that broad appeal or value, then it's just a matter of pace.
Right. And that pace will speed up and slow down, and there might be setbacks in individual organizations or even technologies and things that happen, right? It does. I mean, you go back, you and I are well old enough to remember the whole internet revolution. And I remember having friends that said, I am never putting my credit card on to an online transaction. And I guarantee you there's an Amazon box on their front porch today.
Right.
Or something, right? Somebody, they're delivering it's just too easy.
Right.
It's, the risk reward, you go do it. But to bring this back, you mentioned something interesting a second ago, and I wanted to come back to it, which is there's this notion of value delivery, and it has oftentimes been kind of restricted to the areas of, project management practices, PMOs. All this is an operational delivery where there's been investment in tools and technology and methods and training, and all this has often been limited to a small segment of the information worker of an organization, right? It's 15% max is the most I've ever seen. And I think that's because the overhead, the administrative, some people call it the admin tax to do all of those things is such that nobody feels it's really worth it for smaller work management initiatives, which is oftentimes projectized, right? You've got a marketing initiative, an HR initiative for improvement, something going on in, sales or something else that's not part of a core big product rollout. That's $100 million rollout. It may be a $100,000 deal or whatever that you're going to go spend to go do this thing. But I think more and more, the agency, this term agency, by the way, people are using it a lot. Agency is AI, interpreting and working with people across work. I think that's going to expand. And so the role of the PMO can really expand. And what you were saying a minute ago about PMOs not having the tools is really interesting too. I have been on a mission to kind of survey folks, and I think I've talked to 4 PMO directors in the last couple of weeks about that. And I asked the same 2 questions. One, is your organization managing AI initiatives, co-pilot rollouts, pilots for business process automation? Every one of them said yes. So I asked the second question: do you have any form of robust AI capabilities built into your PMO? Every one of them said no. Some of them have Copilot or Claude or AI Assist or whatever, but no PMO has led the way. So It's interesting that you're asking PMOs to go do transformation things in the age of AI, which you really do have to think differently, and you're not giving them the tools to do it. So you said it, but I want to reiterate it. Maybe the PMO or maybe the value realization office, whatever that is, should be leading the organization, not following it and trying to build it up for everybody else and then do them.
Right.
So it's
there's a definite tension there, because we all get enamored with the notions of innovation and transformation and all that stuff, and TMO is one of the latest, the transformation management office. It's like, okay, great, let's put another label on it.
Right.
If I'm the leader of a PMO, I want to be on the front end of this spear, not the back end, right? And the tools are there. So not using them at this point is a shame, in the simplest term, but it could be, sort of career ending on the other side,
Right.
because we all know the reputations that at times PMOs have had. And so if we're stuck in the old school way of doing things and the rest of the business is charging forward around them, around you, then that will surface, right? People will see that.
Right.
And if you're trying to increase the success rate of these initiatives, and we always are, then the people managing these initiatives need to be just as well tooled as those in the business that are seeking the value out of AI.
Yep. 100%. So kind of bringing this all full circle, going back to kind of sum up what we really have talked about here is the evolutionary steps, and they won't necessarily be, all at one time. You do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but you will move through these steps. Some of them are a little bit finish to start dependent, use project management piece, but it's really about connecting the work so everyone can see the work, including AI, right? So you have visibility. It's about learning from those signals and figuring out how we start to adapt not only what we're doing to in execution to make the value realization today, but also start to adapt how we're doing things in the future. It's really changing that operating model based on those learnings and the adaptation. And then ultimately, it's about becoming co-intelligent and orchestrating work together with AI. So it's really those 4 steps on that journey to becoming,
Mhm.
the Frontier PMO.
What advice, are you giving to people, to companies, on how to get started through those steps and the stages of this journey? I mean, where do you begin?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to really embrace the idea. And again, I was having another conversation with another PMO a couple days ago, and there were 2 people on there. One of them was one of the top project managers. The other was the director, and the director, I think, was sort of seeing the vision. The project manager was still had their project manager hat on, and they were like, okay, so how can we put an AI feature in here? What AI features can we do? And that has been the problem with AI adoption all the way around. Doesn't matter if you're talking PMO or not, is people think about AI as bolt on. You really have to think about it as it's a new way of operating between humans and this co-intelligence thing that we now have working with us. So to get started, to answer your correctly, more directly, is start those 4 steps. Start first by embracing the concept, and then start with the unification component. Unify on the platform and start to bring everything into the work and together so that AI can start to work with humans to interpret those signals. That's the first step.
Mm. And as workers, we're spending all of our time in this platform of tools anyway. So, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I think that pretty much wraps it up for today. You got any final parting thoughts, Tad?
No, just, the next time we do this in a couple of weeks or what have you, something else will have changed.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
I think that that's one of the most exciting things. I find it very invigorating, that, we talk about this regularly, the hype cycle, right? Where are we in the hype cycle curves?
Right.
I think that, it's fun to watch. It's fun to be part of, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of working with organizations that are making the change, right, and that
Right.
are seeing the outcomes. So,
Yep.
great conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Likewise, I think we said this before, it's a super exciting time to be in, not just from the AI perspective, but from the overall capabilities of technology and the platform to solve problems. Again, we've been in this space for a long time. We're able to see and help customers and see customers solving problems that have never been able to be solved before, or in other cases, solve them much, much faster. So, the Power Platform is a good, obviously AI is a component of that, but we're able to do things so much faster than we used to be able to do for customers. So, and that is AI is coming into that as well. So the pace of change is fast, but it's also the pace of value realization out of this stuff, I think, is really increasing. It feels like we're at this huge inflection point. AI has been around for about 3 years now. People are starting to get it. They're starting to get their hands around it. They're starting to understand it, and now they're starting to get excited about let's go. So
Right.
it's a super exciting time to be in the space.
Cool. Well, thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Tad. Until next time, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. If today's conversation got you thinking about your own PMO's future, that's exactly the point. The Frontier PMO exists to help project and work management leaders navigate the shift to co-intelligent work, AI-powered delivery, and Microsoft's evolving platform landscape. For links to the resources and references mentioned in today's discussion, check out the show notes. Mike and Tad want to hear from you. Find Innovative E at innovative.e.com to start the conversation. And if this is your kind of podcast, remember to like and subscribe.